So I started drinking at a very early age, like less than 10. After I got kicked out of my house as a teenager for doing drugs and drinking all the time, the only way I could see of supporting myself was crime. Selling drugs, breaking into stuff. We would always like break into schools and steal the VCRs. We'd sell them for like 20 bucks, which ain't shit, but you go to school and take like 8 VCRs in one night. I robbed the taco shop. I don't know what the statute of limitations is on that shit, but the reason it was so nerve-wracking was because I was on acid. At this time, I was like maybe 14 or 15. I was living in a 2-bedroom apartment with 3 adults and my teenage best friend. They were like all gang members and complete degenerates, always drinking, always doing drugs. But I was like the only one that was usually always doing acid and shit like that. So like everybody's asleep and crashed out. It's like 4 in the morning. I'm like just fucking wide awake. And I don't know why. I was just like, I gotta do something. I'm just like, I'm gonna go rob a fucking taco shop. There was guns at all the time. And I fucking like looked and I just like ran across the street too. Like literally like across from my apartment complex, face covered with a fucking hoodie. And I just walk in, I'm like, hey, give me all your money. And they gave me like 40 or 60 bucks. And I fucking ran back to the apartment. And one of my roommates had to work at UPS. He walks downstairs as the police officer's coming with the dog, because they followed my scent from the taco shop to the apartment. As he's walking down the stairs, the dog barks at him. So they fucking grab him and they fucking put him in the squad car and questioned him for like, he said at least an hour. He didn't even know I had done it, so he couldn't even snitch me out. But he's been a fucking criminal, so like he wasn't gonna say anything anyways. They had to let him go. They didn't have any fucking proof. I'm just lucky they didn't fucking like have enough permission to somehow enter the house or something. There was definitely a lot of times that I thought I was gonna die in that life of crime. A lot of times. And you're just like, fuck, man, like, I got away again. I think it's probably been long enough that it wouldn't matter. But my best friend and his brother were like asking around to buy some weed. And then this kid who was like a fucking, basically like a nerd, but like a stoner nerd, so probably looked cooler than other nerds, but was like, hey guys, I know where to get some weed. It was a friend of his who was probably connected to somebody important. And they, I guess, trusted him or knew him well enough that they were like, yeah, here, have 60 pounds of marijuana. So he was talking to my friends who were obviously like really fucking up to no good motherfuckers. And they basically just like slapped them around and was like, yeah, we're gonna take it. You know, like, what are you gonna do? So they fucking like took the weed and shit. And then they were like selling it, but like almost giving it away and you're just making money and everybody fucking word spreading and shit. And then that guy's like, hey guys, I really need that money because the person that owns the weed is not happy. And it was like some badass motherfuckers, I guess. At some point they found out like where I was living, they were coming to my house in trench coats and shit. And I never answered the door for like months and months. And I had to tell my mom because I'm like, hey, these guys might shoot you, you know, if you answer the door. Luckily, like I moved, and I think my mom ended up moving too to a different apartment. Time just passed and we just stayed under the radar. I don't think they forgot about it. We just fucking disappeared. Like cockroaches, when you turn the lights on, just scatter. So then I was like, fuck crime, man, this is a pain in the fucking ass. Like I always wanted to rob a bank and shit, but you look around, you're surrounded by fucking idiots and you're like, it's not gonna happen. My friend's like, yeah, we'll just fucking walk in with a grenade. I'm like, oh, that's a terrible plan. You look around and you're like, okay, I don't have the resources to make some heat, you know, type shit happen. It's too hard to even make money like this. But it's funny because that nerd had some other nerd friends that thought they were really fucking cool. One of those fucking stoner nerds. This kid was like such a fucking tool, but his dad had bought him like a vintage 69 Camaro. Beautiful, immaculate. And we were at Taco Bell. It's right across from the high school where like most of the cool kids would hang out. They would just like ditch and go right across the street and not give a fuck. And I'm talking to somebody and I'm telling them this story like, yeah, these motherfuckers are talking shit about my friends because we stole all that weed and shit. And he goes, who, this fucking guy? This guy's a fucking tool, man. Like, don't let him talk shit. And I go, nah, you're right. He was a drug dealer. He had like better drugs and shit. And he goes, if you go fucking beat his ass right now, I'll give you a dime with some really bomb ass weed and shit. I was like, yeah, fuck it, why not? So I fucking walk over there and the kid's like, I'll never forget. He's like in the driver's seat with the door open, right? And he's like sitting like this, like smoking a cigarette, trying to be cool. And like all his friends are right here. And I just like walk right up to him and he looked at me like, oh shit. And then I went, bam, 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 right in the face. Took a step back, grabbed the door and went, bam, 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 right in his fucking leg. And I just looked at everybody. I go, anything? No? All right. And then just walked out. And the kid was like, holy shit, dude, fuck. And then he went to his trunk and just pulled out like a handful of fucking like chronic ass weed right there and just handed it to me. He was like, you should leave them.